Hello, my name's Linda Jackson, and a few of my writer friends and I decided to get together and just do something for you for International Women's Day, which is right here with us. So we're looking at a couple of poets each, female poets, obviously, and then we'll do one poem of our own. I recently discovered this girl, Rhiannon Edwards, whom I really, really like a lot. She's a Welsh poet, and she has done this wonderful collection called The Estate Agent's Daughter, where the whole thing is like an extended metaphor. And I'm going to read that to you now. This is the titular poem, The Estate Agent's Daughter. The estate agent's daughter is sold as seen, semi-detached, in walking distance of Penny Bont at Ogre, with all its mod cons, located in a quiet hammerhead. She has wrought iron gates, hard standing parking for two. Her pea gravel driveway sweeps to a cloudy apple composite door, stained window with leaded detail. Her hallway is carpeted with sycamore, seeds and cherry blossom throughout. Her white dog-leg staircase leads to a spindle gallery landing with access to a loft conversion with a skylight window. Ground floor comprises open plan lounge diner, recesses either side of the fire breast wall. Her writing desk has been nudged to the brink of the bay. Curtains may be drawn around her to quarantine at will. Dining table moonlights as tributary desk. Cable knit cardigans draped across IKEA chairs come as standard. Spider warding conquers mob her laminated corners in vain. She boasts a galley kitchen with splashback tiling, integrated fridge, freezer, sunken spot lighting, eye-level oven, rarely used, white goods to remain. The master bedroom is in need of updating. The Juliet balcony in state of disrepair. Outside, she's got a storm porch with power and lighting, chipped area to the side. The estate agent's daughter retains many original features. Coved ceilings, double glazing throughout. Unsuitable for first-time buyers, and no ongoing chain. What a poem, what a book that is, folks. If you get a chance to look at that book, definitely do it. Okay, I could choose any out of this. I have to do something by the great Scottish writer Janet Paisley, the late Janet Paisley. And this is one of her sexy poems. I used to ask her to read it. So going from the abandoned estate agent's daughter, let's get a wee bit hot. This is Janet sailing with tangled sheets. My life is the ship in which you birth yourself, tacking into the wind of a wilder way to be. No harbours now. This renegade dare not dock when madman rattles shot across her bows. You see the scars. Death hawks at my shoulder, fear is a close friend. I have nothing to offer you, man. Nothing but the deep rising to meet you, and my hands that will hold you from drowning. Neither waves, nor stars, nor storms are my making, only the navigation of these hands on your skin. The hunger of this mouth for the salt of you. The ache of my womb that draws you in. Oh man, why do you weep when I take and release you? When I slow the rush of the tide? Inside, tenderness tears me, guiding such raw need. the swell breaking hard enough to splinter the hull. This is my element. Surety of touch is all I have. This boat, this certain bed, sailing with tangled sheets. You give me sleep, anchored in the blue stillness of peace, torn from the rage of the night. This, in my bones, a moment of nakedness, of knowing home. Don't load me with the future, just the rocking creak of timber. And this journey is all there is. Wow, Janet. Wow, what a poem that is. So I'm going to read a poem of my own just now, and this is one from a forthcoming small collection, the first collection of poetry of my own, which will come out, and it's ready now, just whenever things are a wee bit more open for us. And it's called The Cabinet, and it traces the narratives of items from my late mother's display cabinet. I think lots of us girls know those mother's display cabinets you don't know what to do with. Anyway, I took my mother and her sister to Paris. They were in their late 70s. In fact, her sister May might have been a bit older. So that was a trip and a half, I have to tell you. My mother was always desperate to see the Mona Lisa. She had a thing about the Mona Lisa. So I said, let's go, we'll just do it and you'll see it. So this is called, excuse my French, and excuse my Welsh earlier, that was even worse. This is the Louvre in a glass rectangle. The queuing of tourists is wearisome. Will her smile be worth this lifetime? Some days I could read your thoughts. You knew it would be. Something about her face. Beauty was always important, spectacular. Cleopatra hen, if she could handle the men. The metro trip was brutal. Escalator hell, tunnels of people pushing the pace, keeping up essential even with gowping. In the name of Christ, are we nearly there, Ella? May leaning, shopper between legs splayed in that Aunt May way, there on the Boulevard Saint-Michel. For fuck's sake, if we could do another one. The metro effort for securing a look at Mona. The train rattled. A tentative truce was tried. What are you taking back to the Rains? They were keen for the Champs-Élysées. Shopping there might be expensive. We've brought plenty, no bother. I thought of Louis Vuitton and I wondered. By the entrance to the Louvre, your smile, sun radiant, posture proud, somehow you had arrived. As merchants punted remnants of memory, you and your sister chatted about getting in out of this sun that flashed on glass rectangles of Louvre replicas. Inside, we followed our own way, May seated on marble blocks. You marched through to find where Mona Lisa could be. It's the first floor, I say, but no help, no direction, instinct driven to beauty. I left you there, beaming in Denon Alley. May is unimpressed and is fucking knackered. In bad tid now, our feelings on show. There's stuff like this in Paisley, you know, what are we hanging about here for? This comment registered the next conflict. Nothing is said. May pipes up for another gripe and we walk away. You're unable to retain respect for your beloved sister, so each in their cubicles alone. You've seen it now, Mum. Let's go home. She was lovely, Hen. Her smile then was worth all of it. Something about her face, Helen, outside the Louvre on Rue de Rivoli. Thanks very much, folks, and I'm going to pass you over to great poet friend Lesley Benzie. lot have a happy, happy, happy Women's Day. Here's Lesley.
Hi there. I've also picked two women poets before I'm going to read my own one. I don't know if any of them are very happy, but hey ho. The first poem that I'm going to read is by a poet called Sandy Craigie. I was recently asked by Hugh Macmillan, who was appointed as a poetry champion in 2020, for the Scottish Poetry Library as part of a project called Deed Good Scots, to write a poem about a person who is obviously dead, and Sandy is. I'm going to say a little bit about Sandy before I read her poem called Mother. So Sandy Craigie lived and tragically ended her life in Cowgate in Edinburgh. She was only 42, and that was in 2005. Sandy was a real force of nature and a legendary performance poet who could wow even avowed poetry critics. She had a passion for social justice, and that, combined with the hardships of her life, made her fiercely political and really informed her work. But she was never didactic. She imbued her work with shimmering images, vaulting language, and an edgy vernacular she dubbed as a wee bit sweary. So her posthumous collection was called Cougat Bairns, and it was published in 2015 by Red Squirrel Press, and it was basically other writers, supporters, and renowned Scottish writers that helped that to happen. So I hope I can do this poem that I'm going to read justice. I doubt it, actually. She was a brilliant performer, and it's called Mother. I look for her in the faces of other women, in the cues of eyes, in the romantics. The last time I saw her, she was in a hospital bed. They told me on her birthday she had died. I laughed. The woman at the station betrays me. She has her roundness, but the book, I don't think she even owned one. Once, in the blear of winds and rush of Christmas, I thought I saw her, but that was Princess Street in 1987. I look for her in eyes and smiles and Irish accents, in Loch End pubs and Catholic churches, in the Waverley buildings of the Cougat, but even they are gone. Once I thought I caught her eye across a cafeteria. It was my own reflection. Blind and frightened, I turned to look for her in other women. So that was one of Sandy's poems. The next poem I'm going to do is by a writer I actually saw for the first time on an online event on Friday. It was at the Derby Poetry Festival, and it was a Black Lives Matter anthology event. This is the anthology. It was a really brilliant event, moving, powerful, and sometimes harrowing. And this is a short poem, but it's about internalized racism. And the writer, Funmi Adewole, basically was inspired to write it after watching a Facebook event where this young Black American reading to a white audience went on about how George Floyd was not a martyr for humanity, and this was Funmi's. It's a short poem, but I think it's a really complex poem, and it's called Martyr for Humanity. She went live on Facebook saying that she was sorry for the family of the deceased, but his face was not worthy to be painted on walls. He was a druggie, she said, not a martyr. Quoting an academic in Ivy League tones, she argued that the Black race is the only race that celebrates dysfunction. You're an example to your community, a Southern belle wrote in the chat, inspired by this young African American. Your community, I thought, logging off. Hopefully she from my community will one day understand how it is that George Floyd is a martyr for humanity. I want to read this other bit from the book, and it's actually from another Scottish poet. I think there's about 4 or 5 of us in the anthology, but it's a Peter A, but he's taken this from a piece of archaeology. So, Cheddar Man is Britain's oldest complete human skeleton. It was excavated in 1903 at Gough's Cave in the Cheddar Gorge in Somerset in England. The remains date from the Mesolithic period, just over 9,000 years ago. DNA analysis indicates that he was a typical member of the Western European population of the time. Although he had light-coloured eyes, his hair was dark brown or black, and his skin was dark or black, which fits with all the research that shows that human beings, as we know them, were first found in Africa many millennia ago, but we originated in Africa. So my poem I'm going to finish with, is from this same anthology, and it's called Photo Op from the White House to St. John's. And thankfully, there was no second coming for one of my protagonists. What monuments for Omad, Breonna, and George, and all who have died in the land of the free at the hands of vigilantes or police. Police who fired rubber bullets and tear gas for a president who thrives on the smoke blown up his ass by White House sycophants as he panders to his base instincts in allegiance with the religious cult of white America, convinced that a stunt with a Bible will bring him closer to a second coming. The book converted to his accessory for stoking racism, which he has held bloated white limbs on the throat of Black people unable to breathe freely since Spain, then Britain, discovered America. Reversing its mirror to the savagery pulsing beneath white skins, they racially replaced Indigenous Indians, then returned to Africa to clap the limbs and hearts and minds of Black people in irons in their millions, reducing them to entries in British plantation owners' ledgers. Now the streets we tread to protest racism bear these names and statues of world-leading slavers and colonists who sired America's grotesque birth defect, which has found its greatest expression in a president who can barely string an uncorrupted sentence together other than to defend his own thin Scottish-German skin. In a paler reflection of him, the British Prime Minister attempts similar cultural wars, while those piss-poor flabby white men who voted for him will never hear him reflect on Operation Legacy's effect on our real history, nor will they uncover enough facts for their conspiracy theories to fill the back of a deep south fag packet while pissing on monuments they claim to defend. They contend the problems lie with Black people, perhaps for fear they might march on white supremacists and become murdering sons of bitches just like them. I felt it was important to read that poem partly on International Women's Day because obviously women are still unequal. Black people are more unequal and Black women are the most unequal in the world. So I'd like to hand you over now to Tracy Patrick, who's going to read her poems. Happy International Women's Day.
Hello. Both my choices of poets for International Women's Day come from the Penguin Book of Women Poets. This is it here. This edition is probably somewhat out of date now, but what I love about this collection is that it spans centuries and centuries of women's poetry and reflects voices from all over the globe. And what I've really enjoyed about it is not the kind of idealized image of women, that's domestic images of motherhood and wholesomeness, but this real strong voice of disenfranchisement and the struggle for freedom. That's what comes through to me in all these poems. So the first one that I'm going to read is by an unknown poet from Korea. So she was a Kaesang, which is I apologise for the pronunciation, but which is the Korean version of a geisha. So these were women from outcast or slave families who were trained to be courtesans, but well, they provided artistic entertainment to upper class men. But although they were very low status women, many of them were very skilled poets, artists and writers, and which led to them being spoken of as having a lower class body, but an aristocratic mind. And they began their career very young and retired very young. So that kind of tells you something. And they were in effect slaves of the government and were used to entertain foreign dignitaries. And for that, they also had to be very knowledgeable in politics. So this poem is by a Kaesang, but it is anonymous, and it's from 1275, so it goes way back. It's called The Turkish Bakery. I go to the Turkish shop, buy a bun. An old Turk grasps me by the hand. If this story is spread abroad, you alone are to blame, little doll on the shelf. I will go, yes, go to his bower, a narrow place, sultry and dark. I go to the Samyang temple, light the lantern. A chief priest grasps me by the hand. If this story is spread abroad, you alone are to blame, little altar boy. I will go, yes, go to his bower, a narrow place, sultry and dark. I go to the village well, draw the water. A dragon within grasps me by the hand. If this story is spread abroad, you alone are to blame, oh picture. I will go, yes, go to his bower, a narrow place, sultry and dark. I go to the tavern, buy the wine. An innkeeper grasps me by the hand. If this story is spread abroad, you alone are to blame, oh wine jug. And I will go, yes, go to his bower, a narrow place, sultry and dark. The next one that I'm going to read from this collection is slightly later. It's by Julia de Burgos, who was a Puerto Rican poet. And she was also from a very poor background, and all her siblings died of malnutrition. And she was an activist for national independence, and throughout her life, she received recognition for her poetry, but she suffered from alcoholism, had several disastrous relationships, and was frequently hospitalized. And she died anonymously on a New York street in the Spanish Quarter of New York City. I find the biographies of the women poets in this collection fascinating as well. And so this poem is titled To Julia de Burgos, and it's a poem that she's addressed to herself. The people are saying that I am your enemy, that in poetry I give you to the world. They lie, Julia de Burgos. They lie, Julia de Burgos. The voice that rises in my verses is not your voice. It is my voice. For you are the clothing and I am the essence. Between us lies the deepest abyss. You are the bloodless doll of social lies, and I the virile spark of human truth. You are the honey of courtly hypocrisy, not I. I bear my heart in all my poems. You, like your world, are selfish, not I. I gamble everything to be what I am. You are only the serious lady, Senora, Donna Julia, not I. I am life, I am strength, I am woman. You belong to your husband, your master, not I. I belong to nobody or to all, for to all I give myself in my pure feelings and thoughts. You curl your hair and paint your face, not I. I am curled by the wind, painted by the sun. You are the lady of the house, resigned, submissive, tied to the bigotry of men, not I. I am Rosinante, bolting free, wildly, snuffling the horizons of the justice of God. Really powerful, that poem. Excuse me. Okay, I'll finish with one of my own. This is called Quick Sister. It's a new one. Even when the rooms are free of dust, the sheets stainless, air scented with flowers, if such things can be found. The hour still comes too early, and too late one notices the cluttered table, the street mirror, the wound left undressed. And even though the guest is rough and reeking like a sewer rat, your hurried feet do not rest. But sister, you may as well leave the broom where it is, close the windows, lean back in the chair. In the end, all will be dirt. And the guest, dear sister, was always there. It is not his arrival you await, but his departing, which will come at a time of his own choosing, the way a burglar slips quickly out, unannounced, almost without a hush. Though oftentimes your head will turn, your eyes look up, like when a sound holds you fast at the edge of a wood, the sense of someone having passed quickly through, who is like you, sister, and at the same time is another. Thank you, and a very good International Women's Day to all. I'm going to pass you now on to Donna Campbell.
Hi everyone, happy International Women's Day. I've chosen a poem by a woman called Gwen Harwood, and the way I chose the poems really was, got these quite a few books of women's poets, and I kind of opened a page and saw a poem, and I thought there was two that I really liked. This woman was born in Australia, and she came over, she had her first poems published in 1963, and she was an organist in the All Saints Church. When she wrote a lot of poems, she used quite a lot of pseudonyms, and seemingly there's people out there trying to find her work. that they didn't know was her. I've chosen this poem. It's called In the Park, and it's a very sad poem actually, and it's about, for me, and it reminds me of my mother, and about how you can for some women, you can lose your identity once you have children, and domesticity smothers you. So this is Gwen Harwood, and it's In the Park. She sits in the park, her clothes are out of date. 2 children whine and bicker, tug her skirt. A third draws aimless patterns in the dirt. Someone she loved once passes by, too late to feign indifference to that casual nod. How nice, etc. Time holds great surprises. From his neat head unquestionably rises a small balloon, but for the grace of God. They stand a while in flickering light, rehearsing the children's names and birthdays. It's so sweet to hear their chatter, watch them grow and thrive, she says to his departing smile. Then, nursing the youngest one, sits staring at her feet. To the wind she says, they have eaten me alive. Oh. So that was Gwen Harwood. The next woman that I've chosen is from Blood Axe, contemporary women's poets. And this lady, she's got a picture there of her. And it was actually a picture that drew me, a photograph that drew me to her poetry. I've actually read her poetry before, but there's just some, the look in this woman's eyes that, I don't know, there's just something about her. And she was born in 1923 and she grew up in Essex. Yep, and this poem is called The Task. As if God were an old man, always upstairs, sitting about in sleeveless undershirt, asleep, arms folded, stomach rumbling, his breath from open mouth strident, presaging death. No, God's in the wilderness next door, that huge tinder room, no walls and a sky roof, busy at the loom. Among the berry bushes, rain or shine, that loud clacking and whirring, irregular but continuous. God is absorbed in work and hears the spacious hum of bees, not the din, and hears far off our screams. Perhaps listens for prayers in that wild solitude, and hurries on with weaving till it's done, the great garment woven, our voices clear under the familiar blocked out clamour of the task, can't stop their terrible beseeching. God imagines it sifting through at last to music in the astounded quietness, the loom idle, the weaver at rest. I just love poems of people's perception of God. Yeah, and I just think that's a beautiful, beautiful poem about God's task. Yeah. I'm going to read one of mine, which is a work in progress, so please bear with me. Right, aye. As you can see, it really is a work in progress. And I'm calling it at the moment Newts. We used to catch newts in the countryside beyond sparse woods and the edge of Faithfully, where we lived as wains in the 60s. They days, first thing in the morning, we'd be champing at the bit to get out the door, shake claustrophobia from every pore that had settled in our skin like dew through the night. Our countryside was puddled with marsh, bog bean clumps of soft rush and the teeny white flowers of Parnassus grew in abundance, pleasuring the eye. Granny Ellen swore that angels gathered there when she was wee, and one of them had cut their knee and had spilt the white flowers all over the place. On the verge of marsh, we lay in bellies, getting soaked and wet as we learnt the rewards of practice and patience, and the silence needed for copes and newts from murky depths. It could take ages, the ages we had, ropes of time tangled up in quantum fluctuations, careening through the crannies of our fledgling minds. There's one, a sharp whisper from Lynn, and I would see a freckled brown head surface the water. A garland of pondweed slipped from its neck in my hands. A flurried rush of speed would snatch the creature and place it gently in my jam jar. Lynn was tasked with gathering its bedding, slimy entrails of mushy grass and scoops of water. Then we would run like the clappers to get back home, place our newt in the comfort zone created earlier on our veranda. Where's my third bit? Yeah, it's there. Created earlier on our veranda. Our dad would allow us to keep it overnight, get it back first thing in the morning. To the marshes in the countryside, beyond sparse wood, where trees held the weight of makeshift swings, where we knew what it was to grow some wings and what it was like to be alive. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to us. It's been a pleasure. And again, happy Women's Day.